Okay, so 5, 4,
I feel like I'm
3, 2, 1.
and go. Scene.
Okay, so this is Sandra, and she works for the Department
Yes.
of Developmental Disabilities, and she is a service coordinator. Would you consider your
I
work to
sure
be like
am.
a social worker for people with special needs or disabilities?
Yes.
Okay, and so how would you describe your role?
So a strong word that comes to my mind is advocate because you're having to stand up to authority quite a bit. It could be a parent or anybody in this person's life that wants, they're protective of them and sometimes it can hold them back. And so it's your responsibility to kind of plant seeds and dig and just be like, okay, have you tried this? I think you should try this or this and that, and even if they're feeling uncomfortable, it's good to still like do it every now and then and see how they're feeling later on, maybe 2 months later, maybe three, just kind of gauge where
So
they're
you would
at.
consider your role to be an advocate more
Yes.
than anything.
Yeah, because it's
Uh,
for the individual, so it's worth it to make a situation uncomfortable as long as it benefits them in the long run. So,
and so when a person mentions the word collaboration, what is
mm-hmm.
the first thing that comes to your mind?
mm, just teamwork. I think communication and listening well to each other. I think listening is a lost art. It really is. I think that people talk over each other all the time, and it's a natural thing, but as a team, you have to be willing to listen to other people's perspectives and work on things together and not against each other, making sure that you're going towards the same direction.
So, to add my input, when I think of collaboration, remember you're on camera. Uh, for
Oh, you're actually recording
yes, I'm
me?
recording.
Okay. I thought it was
So,
just a
for my
video or a
input,
voice.
when I think of collaboration, I
Mm-hmm.
think of working with multiple stakeholders. And when I say
Mm-hmm.
stakeholders, like we're talking about like not just like the other people that we work with, but
Right.
other like providers,
Yeah.
the families, the
Mm-hmm.
participant themselves,
Right.
and so it's an entire team of people that we got to work with.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's what makes
yeah.
it difficult sometimes. It makes it real fun, but
So when I think
difficult.
of collaboration, I understand that I'm not going to agree with
Mm-hmm.
what everyone says, right?
Yeah.
But ultimately, we have to think about like what's best for the participant,
Mm-hmm.
and is that opinion that they have, is that for the betterment of the participant, or
Yes.
is that going to hinder like their progress at
Yeah.
all?
That's what it comes
Sometimes I
down
have
to.
to take my own personal feelings out of the equation
Mm-hmm.
so that
And
I
sometimes you have to
can.
put them in because they can benefit. I don't.
Yes.
It's hard to explain because I had an individual once where I was like, oh, and I started talking about myself, and because I did, that built a rapport, and they trusted me more.
Yes.
And I think that a lot of the times people take human out of human services. That cliche thing that people
They take
say.
human out of human services. I
Yeah,
like that.
they
I
do
never heard of
because
that
they're
before.
like, oh, I have to do the facts, I have to do the paperwork, I have to. It's like if you just open up to them, they will open up to you. Because how would you feel? Like you trust people to open up to you. So
Have you ever been
it's
in a
hard.
situation where you felt like you weren't able to effectively collaborate with the entire team?
Oh yeah.
Plenty of times.
Oh yeah. Because I'm such a like strong headed person that it can be tough sometimes, but I know like when I'm advocating for somebody it's for a good reason, and so I don't back down. I'm one of those people that just does not back down.
so,
So it can cause like some rough feathers
so what
sometimes.
techniques do you use to help collaborate with people?
um well, I take a deep breath because I realize it's not all about me.
Yeah. Deep breath.
Deep breath's a big thing to do. And then I go, how can I get my point across to these people because they're being so stubborn and I'm being stubborn. So finding that common ground it can be difficult sometimes,
The
but
thing. So
it's possible.
I was trying to think for myself of ways that I collaborate with other
Mm-hmm.
people. And for me, I have to think about, what is that other person's role in all of this?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what are they trying to get out of this collaboration? And what is their end goal? Is their
Yeah.
end goal for the betterment of the participant, or
Mm-hmm.
is it for them?
Or
You know what
yeah,
I mean?
that's a good
Sometimes
way to
people
put
are
it.
just like
You'll
looking out for
notice in
themselves.
meetings a lot that people try to manipulate a situation for the betterment of themselves instead of the individual. And so you have to be the one as a service coordinator or as a caseworker to be like, what's going on here? Like, you're almost like a detective.
What's going on here?
Yeah, because it's like, wait, are you saying that just to protect this person's feelings? And it's just a
or
whole thing,
or what?
which is what I like about the job, honestly. I
Yes.
like that about my career because
Like
it's
Scooby
like,
Doo and the gang. You gotta put
yes,
your detective skills.
that's one of my favorite things about this career that I chose because I just love digging and like finding out the why behind things.
Yes.
It's really, yeah.
So, I remember we talked about this before because it was a little confusing, but when I say transitional services, what does that
Hmm.
mean to you? Or have you ever thought about that at all? Have you ever used the
That's
word
for,
transitional
I
services?
haven't.
Okay.
Maybe I have a
So
different word for it.
so for me, like when I think of transitional services, I
Hmm.
take it back to the time when I worked in the school system and of
Hmm.
course like worked with IEPs and things like that.
Yeah.
You know, a student is always going to need a service for another transition in their
Hmm.
life. So whether they're moving from elementary school to middle school, they'll
Oh, you
say
mean like keeping it going throughout their
throughout
lifespan?
their life.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
there
yeah.
we
Oh,
go.
okay.
That's a great way
That's
to
a
put
good way.
it. And the
Okay.
services that are
Yeah, I
put
get
into
that.
place to help
Hmm.
them. So, like I know someone who's in a fifth grade or elementary school and he's going to go to middle school. He has IEP, he has autism. You know,
Hmm.
what services are they going to use to ensure that that transition is smooth
Right.
to help fully, you know, mainstream him into the
Hmm.
classroom? So, when I use the word transitional services, what does that mean to you? And how does that apply to your job?
Hmm. I think of it as an interesting perspective because it's hard. You want to look towards the future, but you don't want to get so caught up in that because it is possible that people might not need services if you work hard enough.
Oh.
Yeah, if you work hard enough with that individual, for instance, I had somebody that worked with one of my cases that said, "Oh, he'll never be able to drive his own car. He'll never this and that and that," and they weren't very positive towards him.
Hmm.
And then I took over the case. He bought a car for himself.
Oh,
He
awesome.
has a job. Like just the fact that I mean, people can put this magnifying glass on somebody with disabilities and they don't even realize their full potential and how strong they can be and how they might not need
Yeah.
services. So I try not to think so much about the transitional, like, okay, what are we going to do when they get to this age and that age?
Oh.
Because I want to take it a little bit at a time and, okay, are they progressing? Are they,
But I like how
but,
you mentioned like the longevity of it. Like how
mm-hmm,
is it following them through like their life? I
mm-hmm,
think that a lot of people get caught up on the idea of like then what? So like they graduate from high
yep,
school and then what? You know,
mm-hmm.
what's going to be like
And I
what are
think
they going to
I
do?
think that's the same for everybody, like you and me or anyone. It's like we get so caught up in the future and we don't even I mean, you need to focus on the present too though and think about the goals that you have for the future, but if you think too far ahead, it can really
Yeah.
freak you out and it can make you doubt yourself. So it's like I notice that with individuals too. They get so caught up and it's like just focus on each step to get to where you want to be. And so yeah, there's pros and cons to it, but
So
yeah.
how do you think you work with those providers or the other team members to ensure that the participant is getting the services that they need?
Yeah, that's like a common thing in meetings is when they're like,
Oh,
"Oh,
really?
they're going to need this the rest of their lives." And I'm like, "We don't know that though."
Yes.
And so I always try to remind them of that we can't just be stuck on this one notion that this is them for the rest of their lives. Like,
Oh, I like that.
so
That's a good idea.
yeah, I've noticed that in meetings a
So it's
lot.
like this idea that they're, you know, that where they're at currently doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to be them for the rest of their life.
Mhm.
There's always room for improvement,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah,
they, you know, maybe they
definitely.
won't get worse, but they can always get better from
Mhm.
where they are.
Yeah.
And so
But then
going,
there's, it's situational because
yeah.
especially with autism, you know that they're always going to have these struggles that they go through, but I mean, for instance, somebody with sensory, or like that's nonverbal,
Oh,
so they're
yeah.
always going to have that carried on through their whole life. But you just have to think a little bit, like if you're wanting to have a meeting about what's going to happen if they end up in a group or in a nursing home or whatever. But it depends on the team. Like if they want to talk that far in the future, then do it. But I wouldn't focus a lot on it.
So
You know.
what would you tell a person who has a child with a developmental disability who is getting
Mm.
ready to turn 21, so out of the school system, because LPS can go to 21.
Mm-hmm.
And what would you suggest our next move be to help that transition?
Yeah, they have something called, it used to be called Voice Program, but
And that,
now,
yeah, that's so the
yeah.
voice program goes until
Mm-hmm.
the age of
But
21.
now it's independent,
Independence
yeah, academy.
Academy,
Yeah.
yeah. So what once they're done with that, then what?
Yeah, that's a thing because they like train them how to work at jobs and
Okay.
all that. And I would say just having a meeting to ensure that they're following the path that they want. I think it's just like the same with any of us is you have to stop and think about your life. Like, what is the next thing
Yes.
I want? You know, because if they
So
can't even admit it,
so
how?
I know that at the state we work with people with a variety of different needs, disabilities, special
Mm-hmm.
needs. But so do you have anybody in your caseload that's been diagnosed with autism? Okay.
Yes. Yeah, quite a
So
few. I think
can you
three or
describe the
four.
participants with ASD and their families and basically their need for identifying like
Mm-hmm.
local, state, like agencies, like so that they can get like resources basically.
Oh,
Sorry,
okay.
I was mumbling.
Yeah.
I was rambling, sorry.
No,
So
I think
so
that's a
if you
big.
think about like the participants that you had with ASD or any
Mm-hmm.
disabilities, um do you feel like those families are struggling to find resources that they need?
Yeah, so what I've noticed a big word for that would be support. I've just noticed my teams that
Like what?
have
Mm-hmm.
that autism spectrum disorder, it's tough. It's like you know that they have to have so much support in that family. So it's
Yeah.
really neat to see how much they are there for each other, but then it's like they do struggle sometimes. It's
Yeah.
like sometimes there's just not enough resources out there, but I'm it's my job to dig and find them. And I know there's new ones popping up all the
Yeah.
time. So it's nice. It's a good feeling to advocate for that too.
So you recognize that there are challenges,
Mm-hmm.
and you're using your resources to help provide them with that information, even if they don't. So
Yeah,
you already know that
it's
they need that, so they don't
yeah.
necessarily have to say, "Sandra, I need help." You already know,
Oh
like,
yeah.
oh, by the way,
I could
like,
easily just be like, look it up on, go Google it.
yeah,
You know,
Google.
Google it. But
I figured this out.
I wouldn't do that. For me, it's like, okay, they're obviously asking for help for a reason.
Yeah,
I mean, they could easily Google it,
they can.
but I'm like, I'm here for you, and I start doing the research, and I show them what I find, and
So you recognize that there is a challenge with
yeah,
finding those resources.
definitely.
Um, and I wish there was something that I wish there was a better way to help those
I
families.
know it's tough because is it like I don't know because you have to go through it. I don't have to go
Yeah, and I'm
through
not
it
even. I'm
in
just like
my
I don't know.
everyday life.
I don't
I'm
know.
like, where are the resources? Is it like, is there not
I
enough
think
advocating in
one of the
Lincoln?
important aspects when they think of transitional services
I know there's like
is
a day of the year that they
yes,
recognize it,
is
but I
that
feel
you
like,
have to start sooner versus later,
yeah,
and otherwise you can be screwed in the end, like without getting the stuff that you need.
yeah,
So when we think of available resources that are out there, um, like so we could start with education. We know Lincoln Public Schools and our school districts around do a lot for families and
mm-hmm,
students with ASD. So we already know there's an Independence Academy. Do you
yeah.
know of any other educational programs that help? I did Hands of
Hmm.
Heartland.
There's a new one because I was going to have an FBA done for somebody and it was through a new autism organization that just came out. Yeah, I'll have to look it up for
Oh.
you because I was excited to find out
So I do know, like, I
that they're
guess it could be a
newer.
part of education, would be like
Mm-hmm.
ABA therapy.
Yeah, yeah.
I
I used
mean,
to do that.
did
I used to
you?
be a therapist. Yeah.
Yeah, ABA
It
therapy.
was for a
And I love.
company in California and they had me open up a therapy office here in
Oh,
Lincoln.
really? I didn't know
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
so
they
so
asked
were
me
you
to.
like a registered behavior tech? Is
Mm-hmm.
that what they call it? Yeah, I did
Yeah.
that
We
for a
had to
little
do like
bit.
yeah. I
ABA was a
hated
lot of
it
fun.
though. All the tests and
ABA
everything.
was a lot of fun. It was
Yeah.
exhausting, but it was a lot of fun.
It was worth it. You had
And
to take a
so
ton of
I feel like
tests.
that could be included in
Mm-hmm.
education. And so as far as like employment resources, do you know of any
Mm-hmm.
resources that are available for
Mm-hmm.
people that are looking for employment with disabilities? Are there like Nebraska
Yeah,
Voc
that's what
rehab?
another thing that bothers me is there's not. I don't know if you've watched. There's recent shows coming out about people with autism that are trying to date. You know, and it's
Oh,
beautiful, but it's like not a known thing in Lincoln. And I wish there was some sort of like a dating service, or you know, like something that supports them on healthy relationships. Everybody
That could go
wants
under like
connection.
independent living. Like we don't have
Yeah.
enough like options for them to learn how to have
Yep.
healthy
Yep.
relationships because just because you're autistic doesn't mean you don't want to have
Yeah, and
somebody
they'll
in
be
your
going on these
life.
first dates, and a dating coach will help them because they're like, "What do I talk about? What do I do?" And it's hard for us, but it's even harder for them. Like
So
it's like,
unfortunately, we live in a state that doesn't
yeah.
offer a lot of those resources for
I
those
thought
people.
about it. Somebody told me I would be a good dating coach or something.
Oh
That
my
I would
god, you totally would.
like that. I would
What's
just
it called? Love on the Spectrum?
yeah.
Yes, I love that show.
It's
Okay,
such a good show. Yeah.
we are done. Okay, so Sandra, let's sign out. Thank you. Peace out.
Thanks for having me, guys. I thought you were